Hello, I'm Amy from moonmindology.com. Welcome to August. So today we are looking at the transits for this month. It's quite interesting as we have a minor grand trine with two sextiles and a trine between Pluto and Uranus. So let's explore this rare and influential transit. First off, we have Uranus in Taurus. Taurus is the sign of material things as well as businesses, agriculture, food, goods, and with Uranus being here, there can be a lot of changes in those areas. Just in the UK, I've seen a lot of restaurants and payment services go down in supermarkets since Uranus has been in this sign. And of course, Uranus brings electricity, sudden change, and this could be the computerized farming, or it could have be indicative of food shortages as well. So we saw this last in the 1940s during the war with rationing. So we have a good baseline that we can compare against here. So keep your pantry stocked. Uranus is in the nakshatra Kritika, and this is very cutting. It is associated with false accusations as well as fire. When you think about Uranus, we get electricity. And they say that earthquakes usually happen after a storm. So you get a lot of activity when Neptune is involved with Uranus. And we have that sextile aspect, or the 311. Kritika is associated with the story of Karataka. And I'm pretty sure that I've read somewhere that he was destructive to the world around him until he found his purpose in destroying demons. So this is destructive, and it's a cutting force which can be associated with fire. So I would say earthquakes. So fire, as the deity, is Agni, the god of fire. Uranus is sitting close to the fixed star Alcyone, hope I'm saying that right, which is the daughter of the Pleiades. And interestingly, in Greek mythology, she had a child with Neptune. So there is symbology stacking here. The star has an association to blindness as well. So there could be something unseen, or there could be an individual or influence to the masses that are blind in some way. Neptune in Pisces. So Neptune here is really strong, as Pisces is very similar in energy to Neptune. Remember, he is the god of the seas. So there is something stirring underneath the sea or the oceans. And, you know, this could be events to do with water. Of course, we have already seen threats of tsunamis. And when you put that together with Uranus from before, we have a very choppy and watery combination. Neptune is also about illusion and romance as well, also spirituality. So we could have a spiritual movement, and there could be mass delusion. There's a significant spell being cast when this planet is strong, and Neptune is sitting in the nakshatra of Purva Bhadrapada, and this is one of the scorching pair, which are serpents of the deep. So there is a lot of depth here, but there's also a significance of death and fire, and there's an element of psychic behaviours as well. So there can be links to the collective consciousness. This is the warrior star, so there can be hardship. Again, this is a sharp nakshatra with burning properties, and I think this links into that sharp and burning property of Kritika that can create splits in the earth crust, potentially at sea. In short, tsunamis. Neptune is close to the fixed star sheet as well, which is quite a problematic star associated with disaster and violence. When Neptune is linked to this point, it is said that there can be links to drowning and accidents. And there are also cases of shipwrecks, floods, problems within mines, aeroplane accidents, all those great things. But we also have Neptune conjunct Saturn. So this combination is a combination of sadness, oppressiveness, which is Saturn, as well as the glamorous illusion of Neptune. So there can be a real sense of people not knowing what is truly real. It can be anxiety, confusion, and of course there has been an undercurrent as these two have been together for a long time. But when a Mars opposes these planets exactly on the 9th and 10th of August, this can trigger events. Mars adds a bit of anger, so there can be protests and unrests. Mars is in Virgo, so you could see public services getting involved as well. So Neptune is mass delusion, and as I said, Saturn adds a lot of repressive energy. Pisces, well, that's religious, the martyr, and behind the scenes. So we can see something that links one or all of those meanings. Either way, the weekend could be quite interesting politically, both days. So just some advice on a personal note. I wouldn't start any projects around this time. Saturn is foundations, and being conjunct Neptune, stability, it can create illusion. However, Neptune is also compassion. So if you are looking to build foundations of compassion, glamour and mystery, it is a good transit to start something. So now we're going to move on to Pluto in Capricorn. And I do think I've done this to death, but we'll cover it again anyway. So Pluto is the planet of transformation. So that can be death, birth, explosions. And there's also an association of power and corruption. So one of my usual examples of this placement is that Pluto can be linked to big government. So when Pluto is in Capricorn, which is also the sign of success, government and business, we start to see situations where governments can become corrupt, controlled by corporations and or businesses. Either way, there will be massive changes in power structures. Now, this could be for the better or for the worse. We could be going into a capitalistic nightmare, but we could also be coming out of it. Either way, I do think that this may be a drawn out fight over the next 30 or so years, because that is how long Pluto is going to be in this sign. Hooray! But I can assure you that with the nakshatras, there are sweeter parts of this sign. We're just not there yet. So Pluto is currently in Uttara Shadra, which is also called the latter unconquered. It's the universal star, and it does indeed have a warlike quality, but it isn't quite as intense as the previous star, Purva Shadra, which is in Sagittarius. But Sagittarius is very different to Capricorn. So Pluto entered this sign in December 2020, and that's very interesting. I know that we had lockdowns before that day, but I do believe that that was when it did start to become quite draconian. And this was, I don't know if you remember, but in the UK, we had this bloke in power called Boris Johnson, and he had the gall to cancel Christmas, the birth of Christ, cancelled in a Christian country. Well, I do say, what a heathen. So we're still in this nakshatra right now, and we're seeing a lot of political unrest, but it isn't forever. We are going to be going into a much softer nakshatra called Shravana, but that isn't until March 2026 though. So we do have a little bit longer of this mayhem to go, and that's for the whole world. So what can we expect to see in Shravana? Because let's just move on to the nice stuff. This is the star of listening. And, you know, could the government start to listen to the people? I'm not sure about that. Sounds a bit far-fetched to me, but the mythology here is that Vishnu spanned the universe by making 3 steps. That's quite the stride. Perhaps that's why it is associated with an unusual gait. But this could be a time where great steps are made, and they can be unusual. Or it could be that we just all have to listen to the government. I joke. This is a soft nakshatra, so let's hope that we have some good news coming our way. So let's talk about all of this crazy energy between the outer planets. We're talking about some pretty intense alignments here. I can't find the last time that they lined up more or less exactly like this. I went back to 1800 and found nothing. But first off, Pluto brings a massive transition. Uranus can make it very sudden, and Neptune can bring chaos and illusion. And there's soft aspects between all these planets, and this in theory is meant to give a smoother transition into whatever it is. And there can be an element of collective transition or a shift in consciousness. And this can also lean into change in technology, power, spirituality, maybe the AI cult starts. But there's a breakdown of old outdated systems, and that really could lean into a sense of alignment. Of course, there can be chaos on the way as well. There can be powerful revolutions towards spirituality as well as liberation. Neptune can also bring some confusion as well, or is that potentially empathy? As I said, there can be collapses in belief systems or the coming of a new age. Neptune can bring strong technological leaps, and we may find that the world will never be the same. So my mum, she likes a little bit of a conspiracy theory, and she insists that this weekend is going to be some kind of event. And she started asking me for the astrology, and I said, well, you know, there could be something. You know, Mars opposition over the 2 days is really telling that we could in fact have some kind of event, but what could it be? And I do think that there could be something to do with Israel or Gaza going on, but I do think that's maybe around the 13th. But, you know, hey, the world may just go completely mad this month. So, you know, we do have some concerns here. And I'm looking at the new government chart for the UK, as this is the most accurate one that I have. I have a really good time because, you know, I looked at the clocks in the back of the press pictures of Keir Starmer waggling his hands with the King. So first off, Mars is very close to the British ascendant, which shows us that there can be some Martian energy going on here. That could be police, military, general anger, or as small as impatience. Mercury and the Sun are going to be in the 11th house of associates and networking. So there could be events going on behind the scenes, as well as very openly. And the leader may be hidden, but there is something going on openly as well. And it could be to do with religion, laws, rules, also into the world of immigrants as well, because we have that 9th house activation as well as the 12th house. So the moon will be transitioning over Pluto, which could bring an event. And that is more likely to be on the Saturday than the Sunday. So Rahu is going to be right over Saturn, and this is the planet of stability and structure. So this could have a very unusual effect where structure could become warped, or it could be successful with a price. All of that together, we could potentially see something that does impact public service and encourages a massive shift in the law. So there could be something bringing public services into the limelight, and there could be a massive shift, and there could be significant change as well. And, you know, I've been a little bit lax in recording, as we've already seen the protests. But I do think that there could be potentially something long-standing here. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.